Howdy folks, welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory and today is Wednesday, December the 13th, 2017. And I have Mr. Frank Holmes, who is the chairman of Hive Blockchain, and the symbol on Toronto Venture Exchange for Hive is HIVE.v. And Frank Holmes is a renowned global investor that leads the Hive board of directors and is contributing to the company's vision and strategy. Frank is Chief Executive and Chief Investment Officer at U.S. Global Investors, a leading mutual fund and asset management firm. Frank is a sought-after keynote speaker at international investment conferences and a regular guest in business media. His Frank Talk CEO blog is one of the most widely read in finance. And Mr. Holmes, I'd like to thank you very much for taking time out to share your wisdom and your knowledge with the Daily Coin. Glad you're here.
It's great to be with you.
Wanted to talk to you about what Hive Blockchain is doing because I find the business model to be very intriguing, and what you guys have developed, I think, is pretty cool, actually, and I think that it's a great business model. And that's why I really wanted to speak with you. And I wanted to start with a question about the crypto market. And with all the news reports that have been coming out on a regular basis, and in particular from the court hearings about how rigged and manipulated most all markets, the equities markets, the commodities markets, the resource sector markets, all of them, the currency markets, around the world, they have been rigged, manipulated, and it appears that the crypto market is functioning as one of the only, maybe the only free market space on the planet. I mean, what do you see with that?
Well, you know, what's amazing with human beings when they get together, they don't try to find a way to rig a market. So I do know that the basic structure of it is decentralized. And so that's something that's important for investors to recognize. And that's what's made the appeal, because the original adopters were gold bugs.
Yes.
They never went out to sell their gold to buy Bitcoin. They just said, I'm going to diversify to it because it's capped at 21 million coins, and there's not going to be any more of them. And if it can become a utility function, that some people start using it to convert into a service or a product, then it will become more tangible, and that's what's happened to it. So today, Tesla, you can buy a Tesla with your Bitcoins. You can go to Microsoft and buy a computer. You can go to Dell Computer, Starbucks. There's a whole group of wide number of companies that you can use your coin, like money, to purchase a product or a service.
And you're referring to Bitcoin. I was looking at the market, the overall market, as far as Monero and Dash and Ethereum and all Litecoin, all of the market as a whole, as far as the way that the whole thing seems to be morphing and functioning. And you have these massive moves up and these massive moves downs, and just the overall functionality of the way that the market responds and reacts to, like you pointed out, supply and demand. You know, there's a limited supply and a huge demand for Bitcoin. There seems to be limited supply on some of the other cryptocurrencies with great demand as well. And the market kind of responds and reacts accordingly. Whereas, like you said, gold bugs were the ones that originally were looking at Bitcoin in particular, and we don't see that in the gold market. We don't see how when India comes in and acquires 300 tons in a month or whatever it is, or the Shanghai Gold Exchange moves 75 tons a week through there, that has zero effect on the market. And sometimes even a negative effect on the price of gold. And that's really what I was looking at.
I'm seeing that it's a young market. You know, the
Okay.
gold market. The gold market is the fourth most liquid asset class in the world.
Oh, okay.
And so gold goes through. It's just a very unique. These other ones are just starting to become attractive. But here's the negative that we want to say of Bitcoin and Ethereum and these parts is that they need electricity. And if there's no electricity and you're in San Juan and a hurricane hits, they're worth nothing. But gold, silver, and U.S. dollars cash are worth a lot. And so people have to look at these cryptocurrencies as another form of diversification in their overall asset class. And there are some sophisticated people that look at it as sort of a counter to the normal asset class. So the markets are down and the currencies are up. These cryptocurrencies, then they're lowering their volatility. That's sort of the general thought process that I'm hearing. The other part is that the early adopters were gold guys. And then the millennials came in after 2013. And they really became the born again, that this is a way to move money. It's things you'll be able to do with your electronic wallet. And the millennials start to grow. And the real big phenomena is Coinbase. In 30 years, Schwab has 10 million accounts. In 3 years, Coinbase has 13 million accounts. So why is that? I kept asking on my journey to try to find out. And a big part of it is the millennials have this thing called Tinder. You ever heard of Tinder?
Yes.
So Tinder's for dating. And it's quick. You know, you date yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. And they're not going to wait 2 to 3 days to open up a brokerage account. And it's an immediacy that if I want to speculate. And so they turn around and in 5 minutes they can have an account in Coinbase and being wiring in money. And what I've seen is that this world of ICOs and small and Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're replacing a lot of the junior capital markets. This year, $3.5 billion has gone into these what they call ICOs, initial coin offerings, versus IPOs. The cost of IPOs is so great that in the past 20 years, they've fallen 75% drop in IPOs. The average IPO now is pushing 300 million, and it used to be 85 million because the burden costs. Most of the Silicon Valley, you need $5 million, $15 million minimum, and an accredited investor, so the retail consumer doesn't even get a chance to punt at something worth 80 million going to 300 million. The private equity firms, if they have cash flow, they're buying. So I think what's happened is that they've made it so restrictive, and I wrote about this on Friday, that the good expectations, a good anticipation of trying to make things better, when they came up with prohibition, end up having a side effect called Al Capone and the mafia. And they had to basically reverse this restrictive. And the more they reverse it and make it so difficult to trade stocks, then this other side of the world starts to grow rapidly. Money's going to speculate. Money's going to fly a home. It's going to be a racetrack. It's going to be a casino. Doesn't matter. There's this whole thing. But I think it's better that if you have money speculating on a new technology, and it's not just totally controlled by Silicon Valley, or it's cheaper for the Silicon Valley to take a company public at an $85 million valuation, not a lift to 300 million. And now they say they won't even do that. They wait for them to go to 3 or 4 billion. So you and I don't get a chance to participate in that growth unless we have big checks and we're in that limited partnership. So that's just how capital markets are morphing. And they call it the financial ecosystem. When you talk to these young kids, it was my son and my godson, who's made a lot of money, my godson, in this cryptocurrency world. And he's 28 years old, and just shocker. And so they talk about this financial ecosystem, how it's changing, and how they have an electronic wallet and they can convert it to dollars in seconds, and or they can move money around and buy things with it. So I think that's the bigger part. And the last thing I think is really important for your listeners, and I've told my shareholders, etc., is that the internet originally was really slow, and it was dark, and it had porn on it, and it was not a good place to go. And along came this thing called email, AOL. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And it took off. All of a sudden, the internet is good, and then they made it faster, and they made it better. And then out of nowhere, Ask Jeeves came out. Well, he's gone, and it was Yahoo. And then Yahoo seems to be slowly evaporating, whereas Google takes over. And then later on, it's Facebook. It's not MySpace, it's Facebook. So you see an evolution, and I think Bitcoin has done that to blockchain technology. It has woken up the power of this technology, which will really shock you, Rory, is that it was invented in 91. It was basically kept dormant. And it was a concept of moving and validating contracts in an open source ledger system. And you needed a cryptologist to basically the enigma of unlocking and relocking a contract. And what Bitcoin has done is showing that it works. And now we have the major banks have filed 2,700 on blockchain technology. Did you know that the New York Stock Exchange invested in Coinbase 2 years ago when it had a valuation of 75 million, and now Coinbase is worth 1.7 billion? Wow. And I was really shocked when I found out that USAA Military Insurance, that they also invest along with the New York Stock Exchange in Coinbase, and they've made a ton of money on that. And now if you open an account at Coinbase, it can show up at USAA in your brokerage account. And Fidelity, the same thing. All the employees at Fidelity are on Bitcoin wallets, and they can buy food at their cafeteria with Bitcoin, because Abigail Johnson believes that they have to be more innovative at Fidelity, which has $2.5 trillion in assets and the second largest discount broker in the world. You just have to be adopting this. And that was my wake-up call coming back earlier this year in May, of seeing there's something bigger happening outside of my world of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds.
There is definitely a paradigm shift going on right now. And part of it, I'm as excited about it as you are, Frank, and I mean that sincerely. Another part of me is absolutely terrified of it because of the other side of that coin, no pun intended, and that is government intervention, all of the negatives that come along with having everything digital. That I find it's very unsettling for me at this point. And I wanted to ask you about inflation. As you are well aware, I'm sure, all the QE and all the money printing that the Federal Reserve has been doing. Is that some of what we're seeing in this just unbelievable explosion in Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin in particular absorbing some of the inflation that the Fed has been throwing out there?
Well, I think the millennials started diversifying, not trusting government's currencies the way they're printing the paper. I mean, it really is unprecedented that Switzerland would float a $1 billion bond issue and only 100 million is bought by locals, and they print $900 million or 900 million Swiss francs, and they go out and buy, Cadbury's, and they buy their own stocks, and now they own 50% of their companies. And in the U.S., the Fed can't buy stocks, but they can go in the futures market and go in that space. But Japan, Japan is another major buyer. And what I found recently was in filings is that the Swiss government is now a major buyer of U.S. corporations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they have been for some time now.
And that exposure gets increased all the time. So that's another reason for where the market is. And I think the millennials, that they want to diversify where there's decentralized from bad government policies. And I think that's what we're witnessing at this stage. Now, on the other hand, it's much easier for governments to control society if everyone was forced on a cryptocurrency.
Right.
And that's what Chavez did in Venezuela before he passed away. And this is going back 15 years ago. Credit cards were embedded that if you were in Venezuela coming to Florida, you couldn't spend the money in luxury stores or luxury hotels or cars. It was just basic hotel and food. And that was embedded in the credit card to control people's spending. And so this is a mechanism that there's no doubt that governments are going to start to, and you're seeing it. I mean, Russia wants to come up with their currency.
Yep.
Venezuela's a joke because they've sold all their assets to Chinese and Russians, and they're just trying to, pathetic what they're trying to do. But there's other countries really embracing the digital currency.
there are plenty of them that are looking at it. And Russia is the biggest by far with their crypto ruble, if you will. You know, and Putin having that meeting with the developer of Ethereum several months ago, and he's been very vocal about moving away from the U.S. dollar and the world reserve currency, that whole system. He and Xi Jinping both have been vocal about, you know, doing away with that system completely. And now we're starting to see the action being taken in order to bring that to fruition, as far as, like you said, the crypto ruble and various other avenues that they are taking to move away from it. And
Yeah.
I want to look at your company, at the company that you have, the Hive Blockchain. And I said at the very beginning that I think that I find the business model very intriguing. Another part of it that I find intriguing is the fact that it's out on the leading edge of what you guys are doing. If you would, Frank, just kind of give us an overall description of what Hive Blockchain is and the Genesis project that you guys have going on.
Well, first of all, Genesis really shocked me that I never met three young people that couldn't get a bank loan, no capital investment, and in 4 years are billionaires mining coins.
Wow.
And they're mathematicians. So the CEO is a 28-year-old mathematician that finished university math at 16. His partner is a PhD in theoretical physics. And his other partners from Croatia that went to Germany and was restoring historical buildings. It's a very successful contractor. And he contacted them saying, I want to buy a lot of Bitcoins when Bitcoin was under $10. And there was no, where could they find to buy them? And that's how they developed the relationship, and they started going out to build this company. And today they have a rack service or a cloud-based service, and you can go and rent from them that space, and you can rent from them the technology they have invested in, what's called a rig. And so if you want to mine Bitcoin, it's a different type of technology, an ASICs chip. And if you want to go and mine Ethereum and most of the new coins that come out, that protocol requires a GPU, a graphics processing card. And so who makes graphic processing cards is NVIDIA. And NVIDIA stock has been on a tear, and it trades at 60 times earnings with a $120 billion market cap. And so I'm doing this homework, and I'm going, wow, this is a fantastic company. And they're humble. There's no flash with them. And so they're own 30% of Hive. So that was a strategic relationship. And we have all their intellectual capital. They have hundreds of professionals all over the world. They have 800 people. I mean, it's a shocker in 4 years.
Wow.
And what they found was they first went to Iceland because it was geothermal green energy, and it was less than 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And so when you look in the U.S., the average energy is 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So that was, and that's what really makes you successful, because you need lots of electricity to unravel encryption and then resolder it basically in 10 minutes, and you get paid with new coins every time you validate a transaction. Just like American Express validates a transaction between you buying something at a store and charging the store 3% for validating that it's your money, they get new coins for it. That's the model. So I said to myself, well, I'm really intrigued by it because the regulators wouldn't let me launch a product because of, and I rightfully so, the AML, anti-money laundering laws. That's why there's been no ETF for Bitcoin, because you hear about people having their coins hacked or getting paid in Bitcoin, and then the last thing they want to do is have criminals selling their coins into a public listed company. So what I loved about this mining work is that it's original coins. They're brand new. They're virgin coins. They've never been tainted. And you know what they call in Bitcoin? The first coin when you create a validation, the Genesis coin.
Ah, Okay.
And that's why they call themselves Genesis Mining. And then they invented the Hive technology, which is a software that optimizes between the different currencies of what's the best to mine. So your hardware and your software is different from, as I mentioned, between Bitcoin and Ethereum, but there's many different protocols in Ethereum, so you need to have these GPU cards that are really high processing power. So this business is in Iceland. Why Iceland? Cheap electricity, safe jurisdiction, cool weather, because these machines get very hot processing and unraveling the encryption. And so the Nordic countries are proving out to be very attractive for this business, just like Northern Canada is. There's a place in Manitoba, another place in Quebec, Northern Quebec, where there's not expensive electricity and the weather is cool most of the year. If not, it's cold. It's freezing cold. So what we are seeing is that our business model is that we mine coins, and it's the first public company, and that's the first mover advantage. And it doesn't have any AML problems, so it's okay for any type of a fund to buy, because mutual funds can't go and buy Bitcoin unless they manufacture their own, which then they've not been doing that. So this is the safest way for them to participate. So we're very excited about it, and the business model is extremely attractive. We have gross margins of 70%. So our goal was to start off at $1 million a month, and by April, we hope the run rate will be $50 million a year or $1 million a week from $1 million a month. And so that type of number, you say, well, that means you're going to make $35 million after your service agreement, and you're going to have G&A maybe 10. So now you're going to have free cash flow of $25 million. Well, that's a big number. That's worth 40 times because you have first mover advantage. Now, first mover advantage for Amazon is 200 times their earnings. First mover advantage for Tesla, it trades at 6 times revenue per share, and it's bigger than General Motors, who trades at 0.6. So for every dollar of revenue Tesla, the market rewards at 10 times the value for a General Motors revenue. So we went through this analysis and that first mover advantage, and being the company, that's what we are. We think that it was very reasonable for it to go to $1 billion. Right now, it's going through a financing. It'll have $100 million of additional cash. So we've raised $75 million. The additional $100 million will take us this time next year to double. And so we hope to have between 80 and 100 million in revenue, and making between 35, 40 million and 60 million in cash flow, free cash.
That's a lot of free capital.
That is. And so I think that's where the excitement is.
Yeah.
And it's shown up in a couple of new indexes were created for the cryptocurrency world because it's the only pure way to play it.
I like it. Like I said, I really like the business model that you guys have created. I think that I look at it and see it in the same type of light as what Keith Neumeyer has done with his first mining finance with that business. I love that business model. I can't say enough about it, and I see Hive in that same type of light. And I want the CME has now launched their futures contract.
Yep.
And what type of impact do you think that's going to? Do you see that having, if any? I mean, it might not have any impact. I mean, I know it's just getting out into the market, but are you seeing anything? Are you within the projections that you're looking at?
Well, I think the only thing that always bothered me is that I loved about this industry because it was a cash economy. It wasn't leveraged. And bubbles are always, everyone kept calling a bubble, but it's not leveraged. So bubbles are always when there's excessive leverage.
Okay.
If we go back to the crash of '87, that was leveraged in the futures market. If we go back to 2000, it was most of these technology stocks were on margin, and that basically created a cascading. And we go back to 2008, that much of the housing was leveraged 20 to 1, and brokerage firms had been allowed by the government to leverage themselves 33 to 1. So that unraveling created the crisis. So this one has been so far a cash economy. You know what's really interesting about a cash economy? With the crash of 08, 09, Africa grew at 6% because there was no mortgages, there was no car loans. It was a cash economy. And so I don't know how disruptive, beneficial this futures market will be, but they have to be really careful because these Bitcoins and Ethereums, etc., they trade 24/7 all around the world. And the exchange is not trading 24/7, so they can have this extra volatility. And the reason why they let that come out is because it's a future price. It's a derivative of a derivative. It's not a coin. So I think that can be disruptive in that own world, that someone could get hurt trying to speculate that way. But I don't see it going to disrupt Coinbase. Or in Canada, it's called Einstein Exchange.
Okay.
It's amazing. You know, you can open an account in 5 minutes and wire in your $5,000 and be long a fraction of a coin.
That quick.
That quick. Not 2 days.
Not 2 days.
No. And that's
no margin calls, no broker fees, no anything. The fees on the exchanges are very small. They're manageable.
Yes, very much so. So it's a different world, and I feel very comfortable about it. The biggest revelation for me was recognizing this financial ecosystem that's outside of our ecosystem.
Right.
That is stocks, bonds, ETFs, and gold. This world's a digital world, and I think what'll be really good for gold, what'll be very good for gold, would be when they get the Chicago. I think the CME wants to come out with a coin for a gram of gold, backed by gold from the London Mint, the Royal Mint. I think that would add $50 billion of buying.
They've been working on that for a while.
Yeah,
and it is going to be in 1 gram increments, and it's going to be tied to the Royal Mint, so you can get 1 gram of a gold sovereign in those increments. And I wanted to last question, Frank, and I'll let you get back to your afternoon. And we were talking about Russia just a minute ago, and we touched on this, but I want to get a little bit more in depth. We know that Russia is full bore developing a crypto ruble. We touched on how governments, they want to control everything. Do you see? And the Fed coin is being developed. There are the IMF, Christine Lagarde actually came out and said, quote, "We're going to crush cryptocurrencies," end quote. And then almost in the same breath, she said that she wanted a cryptocurrency developed by 2021. She wanted it in place, not developed, but in place by 2021. That's 3 years from now. Right. So that means that in the Fed coin, and then there's the utility settlement coin, which is another central bank cryptocurrency. What do you see happening with these governments getting their hands all over the blockchain technology, the cryptocurrency market? It just, I personally don't see anything good coming from it. And what do you see?
Well, I think the big part for her is the amount of money that goes from poor people working in North America and going back to these countries, and the expense of that. I think that was their motivation. And so when you look at capital inflows into the Philippines, the largest source of capital inflows is from Filipino workers in the U.S. and Canada. If you look at Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico, it's American, Central American Americans. They're sending money back to their poor families. Okay. Now, when they get $100 from Western Union, and it's all they can send at this moment, because remember, most of them are working minimum wage.
Right.
They could lose $17 to $25 or wait a couple of days. Blockchain would happen in 10 minutes. It would cost $2.50. You could do it from your phone. So what's the value of that if you could transmit the money So I think Western Union is the short. They have 400,000 offices, and it's just recognizing that process is so expensive, and the movement of money right now in Africa, it's been growing for 20 years, is that people do all their banking off their cell phone. Debits and credits. I can send you and buy something from you off the cell phone. So we don't have that technology, and we have many more AML concerns and controls, but that's not so there. And I think that's where they're interested. That's what they're interested in.
Well, all right. Is there anything that we haven't covered, Frank, that you would like to share with the audience? Or
I launched a product which I spent 8,000 hours on, and I wrote a book on gold and gold stock picking, and I launched a product in New York, and that was where I learned about New York Stock Exchange and investing in Coinbase. And this is a smart beta. It's a quant approach to picking these gold stocks. And it outperformed the GDXJ, looking back, 94% of the time on rolling 12-month periods.
Wow.
It over 10 years, it was plus 60%, and the GDXJ was minus 40. So we launched it in June, and so it's now outperformed by 8%.
That's awesome.
It's doing what it's doing, and it's GoAU is a ticker, Go Gold, for those who are gold investors. That's something for them to explore as another methodology. Gold's ripping today, and I think for your listeners is that 5-year government bonds right now are still negative rates. So gold's very attractive.
Very attractive.
And 2 years is like a 180 yield with inflation at 220. So why would you ever buy a 2-year government bond when you can buy good gold stocks paying in dividends and growing? So GoAU is something for your listeners to explore. It's a simple way, and I think just as you mentioned earlier regarding the mining finance, I think that's a brilliant idea because it gives you optionality, and and we have found that optionality is one of the best ways to play this space. And if you're looking at that and you really believe in this big crypto build out around the world and Tesla build out around the world, the best commodity is going to be copper.
Wow. Okay.
So they're going to need to rewire all over the world, and copper is the best metal. So I think copper has quickly stepped back here to 3 and change. And there's been no major discoveries like the gold space. We have peak gold and we have peak copper. So I think that the two metals look very, very attractive if you're a big player in the digital workout. Okay.
I like it. Thank you so much. I'm glad I left that open for you. That was really great.
All right, then.
All right, and we've been speaking with Frank Holmes, and he's the chairman of Hive Blockchain, and you can find more out about them on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol HIVE.v. Frank, thank you so much for all your time today. I really appreciate it, and I hope to speak with you in the not too distant future.
Very good. Happy New Year for all of your listeners. Bye.
Bye-bye.